really, this is about intention and not perfection. Everything, we're never going to be perfect, but especially from the beginning and as you are building a business, it's not about perfection. It's not about having your graphics look, like $1 million. It's about the intention. Again, that authenticity. When people see that you're trying and you're working and you're hustling, even if it is maybe showing up in jeans and a t-shirt once in a while on Instagram, that is what matters over having a perfectly polished, sometimes even false or fake looking feed or brand.
Hello, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited today. We have a special guest and we're going to talk all things branding. And we have our special guest. Her name is Alyssa Hausneck. And Alyssa is the founder and also she is the creative director of Liz House Creative. So please join me and welcoming Alyssa to the platform. Hey, Alyssa, how are you doing today?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here. Doing well.
Well, we're excited to talk about branding. There's a lot of confusion in the entrepreneurship world between branding and marketing and really what is it and the importance of it. So let me go ahead and just have you start. Tell us, what is branding and how is that different from marketing?
Totally. It's such a huge misconception. And I feel like so many people, entrepreneurs, small business owners, feel super overwhelmed by the idea of branding and building a brand. So I first want to say, if you hear that, take a deep breath and know that it can be simple. It doesn't have to be super complicated. So I really like to start out by saying that you are your brand. Super simple, but that's something that you really should remember as an entrepreneur, that you are your brand, no matter whether that's online, whether that's in person at a networking event, now that we're getting to meet people in person again, right? You are the representation of your brand. So your brand is not your logo. Your brand is not your color palette or your fonts. Those are all really what make up our visual brand and our maybe brand aesthetic. But I like to really say you are your brand. So within that, we can kind of dig into some areas, like I mentioned, that visual identity or your brand aesthetic. We also have your value identity, which is that foundation, a true foundation of who you are, what you do, why you do it, how you best serve your clients, and why they love you and need you. That's that value. And then we also have your verbal identity. So those are kind of three pieces. Your verbal identity is your messaging and the way that you communicate your brand through, speaking or writing online.
I love that. That's very unique spin on it. You are your brand. So how do you go about determining what brand is appropriate for you, right? Because,
Yeah.
maybe my personal life, maybe me walking around in jeans, it's not the brand I want to present
Sure.
in my career world.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I'm so glad you asked. So I think that it's so important to remember, right, that piece that I mentioned, your ideal client, your ideal audience. I really look at your brand. I guess I have lots of three parts. So I say to look at you and your brand and your ideal customer as a Venn diagram. So if you can kind of picture a Venn diagram in your head, you have you, yourself, maybe that's your business, depending on if you do have a product-based business. So your business on one side, your dream client, your target audience on the other. And then that Venn diagram, if you're picturing that in the middle, that's really where your brand is. The core of it is in that middle of that Venn diagram. So that's a great thought. Maybe you walking around in jeans and a t-shirt isn't necessarily the brand that you want to portray to your audience. That's okay. But I think the deeper piece of that is we are really we obviously live in such a digital world right now, right? I mean, COVID has made that exponentially more the case that we are just seeing each other through screens. We're taking in content online so much more than in person right now, I guess, unless you have a physical product. So it's super important to remember that even if maybe you in jeans and a t-shirt isn't necessarily how you want to portray your brand online, the really core piece that I want you to remember today is that people want to resonate with you and your brand. So even if you have a product, they want to resonate with people. You're probably seeing online today, especially through COVID, after COVID, we're in such a digital world where your ideal customer's entrance to you and your business and your brand is online. So really showing up in an authentic way that's true to your brand doesn't have to mean that you're in a t-shirt and jeans and maybe showing every area of your personal life online. That's totally understandable. But we want your ideal clients to really deeply resonate with you and the product or service that you're selling. So really the bottom line for that is just being authentic in who you are and in the content that you're creating.
Got it. So being authentic, but then also keeping in mind your ideal client and what they're expecting to,
Totally.
so that you can make sure you align the two together in order to really attract, right, with your brand. And that's going to be really important there. So, Alyssa,
Absolutely.
when you're building a brand, what are some things we need to consider?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I really encourage all of my clients and people that I work with that we start with a foundation built in strategy. So, oftentimes you may hear, I want to work on my logo. I have to get my website up and running. And while all of those assets are so important to your online brand and your online presence, we really need to start in a place of foundation. Again, kind of talking about that Venn diagram, figuring out your ideal, your dream customer, what your messaging is and how you're going to best reach them. My friend Mike Kim is a brand coach, and he has an analogy in his book about a New Jersey strip mall. Kind of a funny thing to think of, throwing it back a little bit to the days of malls. But if you think of those big malls back in the day, there were so many entrances, right? There's entrances through department stores. There's those weird hallways that you can kind of enter in. There's, tons of different entrances. And that's a really fun and cool way to look at your brand, is that you should have so many different entry points that your ideal audience is able to find you online. So you may have, and in person, you may have different audience members who have different demographics or needs for your services or your products. But the point is that we're creating lots of entry points so that they can really, find you and you're able to serve as many people as possible.
I love that. That is really, really neat. And so when you're thinking about building a brand and you're looking at creating a brand that's memorable, right? Because at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
we want people to, when they have that need, to immediately think about you, right? That's the whole point of that. Like you walk through past, I'll give you the example of Tiffany's, right? And you see
Right.
a blue-green box. You don't even have to have the word Tiffany on it. You just think of Tiffany, right?
Totally.
So how do you create a brand that is memorable?
Great question. I think, first I will say, as I talked about that strategy and that foundation, it's really important to get clear on those pieces. And then it's important to, again, stay true and authentic to your brand. And the reality is that you will build that brand recognition and that fan following and that fan base over time. Tiffany has amazing, like you said, you see the blue box, it's Tiffany. Starbucks, you see the green straw, it's Starbucks. But without the, really foundation, I keep saying that word, but foundation of their brand, their amazing product, their amazing customer experience, those are the things that they're known for, that has built their reputation over time. So I really encourage, if you're listening, if you're building a business, start with that intention to build authentic, genuine connection and following. And that loyalty and trust and recognition will happen over time. It is, of course, important to have a strong visual brand. That can obviously be so helpful and is so important in building a strong, really trustworthy brand. But it comes from that foundation of having solid knowledge and using that knowledge for your power in connecting with your audience.
I love that. That's very, very, very interesting. And with that. And it just takes time really to make a
Absolutely.
memorable brand that people will
Hmm.
remember, that really stands out. And repetition too, right? It's just constantly showing up in the market and reminding people that you're out there too is very, very
Absolutely.
important with that.
Consistency over time is going to be your best friend. If you're, changing your colors, changing your logo, changing your styles every 6 months or even every year, you're not going to be able to build that recognition in a customer's head. So, sure, there may be time that you need to refresh your brand or say, you know what? We need to kind of change things up and shift in a new direction, but you need to give it time to really see what's working.
I love that. That's very true. I can imagine. I see that a lot in new businesses. They'll have one logo. It's almost like they're testing different logos
Hmm.
um, and brand colors. But it's important to really put that thought in it and be consistent to deliver in order to build a memorable brand with that. Now, in terms of marketing and branding, how do those two really differ from each other?
Mm, great question. So I really look at marketing as the big picture plan over time. So while you have lots of elements of marketing, and marketing channels, whether that's social media, whether that's your website, even your business card or paper flyers, those are really, marketing assets that help get your message out. Branding is really, again, that foundation that your marketing is then built upon. So you take all of the brand strategy, your ideal customer, your dream audience, and use your marketing to speak to them.
I love that. And so, Alyssa, in terms of when things go wrong, when you see entrepreneurs not creating memorable brands, right, where they start to blend in with everybody else, tell me a little bit about where things start to go wrong and what does that look like and how do we avoid those things?
Yeah, this is so easy to do. And let me tell you, have been there myself. And it's not easy to kind of run the course and stay with it. I kind of am speaking on the same themes, but I really do believe that when you start stepping out of your authentic self and who you really are and focusing on you and your brand, your own presence and the message that you want to communicate, whether that's verbally or visually, and start being what you think people want you to be, or maybe kind of, and again, I've been here looking around, seeing who's on the market, see what's trending. I think that's where we start to slip. And I've even felt that myself is when you're trying to be someone else maybe, or trying to imitate something that maybe isn't 100% you. I think that is where we start to kind of slip and may need to readjust. And that's so easy to do with comparing ourselves to others and imposter syndrome, and even, wanting to keep up with trends and what's modern and current. There's absolutely nothing wrong with staying modern and fresh. That's actually, what we should be doing in our branding and in our marketing. But I think it's really when, we have to continue to stay true to who we are. And sometimes that also we have to recognize that we may not be for everyone, right? Our services, our product may not be for everyone out there. And that's actually probably a good thing, because you know that you are serving your clients and customers in the best way possible.
I love that. So embrace your different, right? Whatever makes you
Yeah,
different, that's what you want to embrace then. That
totally.
still speaks to your people. So it's a little
Absolutely.
complicated. Embrace your different, but in a way that resonates with your ideal
Mm-hmm.
customer. Is how you want to go about doing that. Now, Alyssa, we are a profit first channel, right? So at the end of the day, it's all about profit first. It's all about
Mm-hmm.
making sure our entrepreneurs are profitable as they grow their business and as they scale. How can we build brands in a way that is affordable and also profitable for us at the end of the day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you're starting out, I would encourage you to take it, I mean, really at any stage in the game, take it one step at a time. It can feel super exciting and also overwhelming to, want to take on all these assets and, a website and a logo, all these pieces. It can be really fun. And that sometimes feels like the first step. But I would definitely recommend getting with a coach, getting with an expert, even if it's just a one-on-one call. That can be so helpful for you, to really invest in yourself and do it the right way from the beginning. I really just would encourage you, especially if you're starting out or if you're thinking about rebranding. I'm sure you've heard that term before. To really start it just one step at a time and work in a process. So you don't have to have, a 20-page website and a whole logo suite with, all of your visual assets set out from the gate as you're starting a business. I would rather have you take it one step at a time and do it right from the beginning, rather than trying to do too much at once and maybe having that be misaligned. I think that also can happen when often I have my clients tell me that they've piecemealed for a really long time. They're kind of patchworking. We all understand that it takes money to run a business, right? You have to invest in yourself, and that can feel really scary up front. So definitely understanding and just having realistic resource limitations until we get going. So I definitely recommend, again, to do it right from the beginning. So maybe it means that you're going to start with an amazing one-page website. Maybe you invest a little bit more, or maybe even around the same price that you would for a cheaper 5-page website, right? To have someone who knows what they're doing, they're hiring, you're hiring an expert to really help you. I think, we often, as entrepreneurs, have such an amazing spirit that we can do a lot. We're very multifaceted. But sometimes that can be a hindrance, right? Because we're trying to do too many things on our own. So, like I said, I would start small, take it one step at a time, and invest in experts to help you, so that you can do it right from the beginning. I have a lot of clients, like I had mentioned, the kind of piecemealing and patchworking often end up saying, man, I spent like 2 or 3 times the amount on all of these assets that now I need to redo again in a year because I had 4 or 5 different people do them, and, they didn't really work for me. So that can be hard, and I have been there, but that would be my advice, as you're starting out.
I love that. And that second opinion, it goes far, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
maybe we think something is really cool, but maybe it's, when we look around and it's not attracting the right customer,
Right.
it's starting to dig deep why and really get that second opinion of, maybe you don't look that cool in that hat, maybe that's not going
Sure. Yeah.
to attract high ticket if that's what you're going for. So that second opinion does really is important. I like to, Alyssa, what you said about, sometimes it's not going to be necessarily the cheapest website, right? Maybe it's, you're going to pay for what it costs to do a 5-page site. It's better to be simple, but more on target in terms of attracting your customer than complex and really just, affordable, but not necessarily going to do the work that you want it to do. So definitely balancing that cost with the impact that you want to have and making sure that you're getting the quality to do that. So that's very important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Alyssa, one of the things that I like to ask our guests is if you could leave our viewers and our listener with one piece of advice, and it can be personal, it can be business. What would that one piece of advice be?
Such a great question. I think this kind of wraps up everything we've been talking about a little bit. And I would say that when you're approaching your brand and even marketing, really, this is about intention and not perfection. Everything, we're never going to be perfect, but especially from the beginning and as you are building a business, it's not about perfection. It's not about having your graphics look, like $1 million. It's about the intention. Again, that authenticity. When people see that you're trying and you're working and you're hustling, even if it is maybe showing up in jeans and a t-shirt once in a while on Instagram, then, that is what matters over having a perfectly polished, sometimes even false or fake looking feed or brand. So I just want to encourage you that keep working, keep pushing forward, and it's going to be that consistency over time that really makes an impact over, inconsistent, perfect action.
I love it. I think that's amazing and really great advice. And so, Alyssa, where do we find you? How do we work with you? What is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I love hanging out on Instagram. So you can always find me and DM me there. I promise I'm always behind the screen. It's Liss House. And you can also find me online at lisshouse.com. And I would love to offer your listeners, I have an amazing resource that is a 15-page workbook. It's totally free on my website, and it really helps you start building a brand that you feel confident about. So this is a great place that you can take some time. I encourage you to print it out and have some fun with it and really dive deep into those foundational questions that I had mentioned. So those are at lisshouse.com/podcast. So you're listening to a podcast and super easy to find it there.
Thank you. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually put that URL in our show notes so that you guys can get in touch with Alyssa, as well as download her brochure where you can really learn how to implement a brand. Thank you, Alyssa, for joining us today and sharing your knowledge with us on how to build a brand.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was such an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.